I'm Mark Baer. You're watching YourTown Television. I'm with Denese Sanders, artist and founder of Open Ground Studios. And welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
So, how many years? 5 years already?
Yeah, we opened the studio in 2013.
Okay, so before we even move on, let's say where it is and what it is.
Open Ground Studios. It's in Seaside on Fremont Boulevard near Hilby. And it's a 2,000 square foot studio space that houses artists, and we are a fine art school.
And 5 years already.
5 years, yeah. It's been an interesting ride.
Okay, so let's forget about that for a minute, and let's talk about you, the artist. I guess the fine artist, I should say, fine artist, and Stanley Hayter and Paris. And let's go to...
You're going way back.
Let's start with the roots.
Sure.
Who are you?
I'm Denese Sanders, and I came to Monterey 15 years ago. And my father's a political cartoonist, and so I grew up with paintbrushes and art all around, and I always thought I would be an artist. There was no question ever in my life about it. And so I went to school at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago as a graduate student. But prior to that, when I finished my undergrad, I went to Paris to study printmaking at Atelier 17 in Paris, France, which is a world-renowned printmaking studio that created a kind of color etching that was not invented before them.
And I bring this up because, as we've discussed, it's really important that we don't get parochial about these kind of things, and that artists aren't self-depreciating.
Yeah, no,
because this is professional training in the professional world, in the big world, and because now we have this in Monterey, it's not a small time thing. It's a big thing. It's a big thing that you've brought to this community.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It is true. It's interestingly, Atelier 17 was really one of the first studio models ever of shared space. And when Hayter moved to New York during the war in the 40s, he brought the concept of shared studio space to New York and the New York School. And from there, people who studied with him in New York then branched out throughout the country and opened up shared printmaking studios all over the place. Kala, which is I think they're celebrating 30 years coming up soon, in Oakland, is one of the people who studied with Hayter similarly to me. And so having a shared space for artists to work is something that is an urban situation. And we had not had one in Monterey. When I came here 15 years ago, there was nothing like it. And I miss it. I miss having a place where artists can work together and share their expertise with each other. And like you said, being an artist is not an easy path in any way, whether it's financial or time or expertise. You don't improve without constant work and constant practice and constant support. And whether it's internal support that you say, no, I'm doing this and I'm good at it, or if it's someone else saying, yeah, you really need to get your work out there, or you need to still have more time to do it. It's all important.
Yeah, and so I just want to stress the luxury for our community to have this, and to appreciate it, because you did it because you brought your passion. You didn't do it to say, oh, because this would be a great
this is a great way to make money.
This is a great business opportunity here. I could put,
Right.
And it is something special. It deserves the and it has been recognized, and people are using it, and God only knows you've survived 5 years.
Yeah. This last year has been a tough one. I've done a lot of soul searching, and this kind of goes back to our conversation about being an artist and also being a business person and an educator. It's taken its toll on me as an artist, and I've recognized some things that have been working really well and things that have been harder to do in the last 5 years. One of the main visions that I had was to be able to have a supportive environment for emerging and professional artists to work in the same space, and that to be able to create opportunities for artists, myself and anyone else who happens to be associated with Open Ground Studios, and having opportunities for creative adults. And I use that term as though it means something to everyone, so I'm going to describe what that means to you. I believe that adults need to be held in their own, in a space that allows them to explore their own creativity. Because many people have it, everybody has it when they're kids, and it's beat out of them over time, ultimately. And then we get invested in our careers and in our raising our families or whatnot, and we don't have the confidence to go back to say, I actually really want to make some art, whether it's I just want to do watercolor or I want to learn how to oil paint because I've always thought that was exciting. That is not just a luxury. It is something that can help us manage the stress of our lives. It can help us find a voice that we didn't really feel like we had. And so I've been trying to hold that space to allow people to come back to their creativity. So I call them re-entry artists. So we're trying to give an opportunity for people to access that part of themselves. So that's been really successful in the last 5 years. We have a whole slew of people who now self-proclaim as being artists, and they're in their 50s and 60s, and they never said that about themselves before, and they're super proud of the work that they're doing, and they're finding that they're better in their professional lives because they have this outlet.
So what we were talking about before the show is there's this trend when artists, trained artists, professional artists, they'll get in a community and they'll get involved with children's art or museum art, or they'll get involved in some kind of thing where they have
administrative
thing and they're teaching, and the demands of that become so great that they stop doing their own art, or these organizations don't push them, don't make the time for them to do their own art, and don't see that if an artist isn't advancing, and to be an artist is a lifelong commitment. You only get there by deep immersion, and if you're not making that deep immersion, you're not doing the true thing, and you're not really able to give on any really meaningful way. And you've come to that conclusion right now.
I have come to that conclusion for myself right now, exactly. And so that's why we've done some shape-shifting of the studio. Not just that personally, but yeah, I have lost a lot of my own time and energy to make art, and I also don't have my own dedicated space anymore, which I gave up to do this for the community. I put all my studio equipment into a shared space, and I still had access to use it, but I didn't have my solitude around me, and the administrative part started to suck that energy right out of me. And so in the last 3 months, we have reconstructed the studio, and we've developed 7 dedicated workspaces for artists to rent on a monthly basis. And I get one, so I'm excited. Everything's set up now, and I'm really excited to be able to move back into that. And what's exciting for me also is that like you're saying, I know I'm going to be better at everything I do when I have time to really dive back into my creative source. I'm a more interesting person. I'm happier, and
you're more interested in yourself.
I'm more interested in myself, and I'm actually going to be. What has been exciting about what we've been able to do for all the other artists that we've been working with is we have been creating a lot of opportunities for artists, and their work and their professional lives are getting better. And I'm shifting myself to start putting more of that on me. I'm a designer, I'm an artist, I'm an interior decor consultant, and I'm a space consultant. And I want to start having that be more centrally focused in what I do with my everyday life, and being around the artists that I've been cultivating all these years, and the environment that I've designed and created is going to be helpful to not only other people but to me too. And I'm 2018 really excited.
Yeah, I really like that. It's so important. Let's talk a little bit about what the history of Open Ground has been, and what do you offer. And one of the things I'm interested in is, have you put enough of a group of people together that if one person is interested in one thing and has one skill, another person has another skill, can you come together as collaborative efforts?
Yeah, actually, that's one of the things that's exciting about this new shift that we're in. In the past, we've been called a community art studio and a fine art school. Right now, we've shifted to become an artist collective and fine art school, which means our education program is being reduced. It's still there, and our teachers are excellent. These people who I've given teaching positions to over 50 local artists in the past 5 years, and we've taught everything from calligraphy to oil painting, classical painting, abstract palette painting, to printmaking and mask making, everything. And we're now shifting to being more about people who want to learn something have great people to learn from at Open Ground Studios, whether it's through private lessons or through the ongoing classes that we offer. And the artists that are now, we now have co-op members which have still shared space in our printmaking studio or our painting studio, and then the resident artists have their own dedicated spaces. And because we are now all working under the same roof with the same commitments, we have our artists range in age from age 16 to 72, and range from an artist named Paul Richmond, who moved here from Columbus, who's a professional artist and has been painting since the age of 3. He's an amazing person, generous beyond words, and he's an activist. So we've learned from his activism on how we can become more active. So there's a natural engagement. It's not about necessarily collaborating on any one project, but when there's an emerging artist in the studio who watches someone like Paul, who's made an entire career out of being a professional artist, and they see him and say, what do you think about this? And do you think that I could do that? He's right there to help guide them, just like I'm right there to help guide new printmakers as they come into the space and say, I'm really not sure how to move my work forward. There's this constant conversation that's going on, and it is really a kind of a beautiful thing to see how we grow together.
And one thing about art is, I don't want to use the word competitive, but you need to be around people that are all in, to understand what the bar is. And that's one of the things that if you haven't lived in an urban center, if you haven't lived in New York or LA or Paris or London or in an urban, in a big art center where you really know that you're going to get washed out to sea if you're not really on your game. And if you don't know what that game is and how hard it is, you have a false sense of it.
That's true. That's true. And I think here in Monterey, that's actually one of the things I'm excited to be part of the art community and being a leader in the art community, is really wanting to have both, to have people approach art because it's something that they want and they need in their lives, and they don't care. They're not going to sell it. They don't even really necessarily care about showing it. But working alongside artists who do, and who are, whether they're conceptual artists, installation artists, or contemporary artists, or if they are traditional painters, there is a level of excellence that can be seen, can be strived for if they choose to. But we as a general, in the last 5 years, we've really created a reputation of being open and welcoming. And that has enabled people to not feel the competitive nature that sometimes in urban centers
So
I'm
not sure the competitive is the right word, but just knowing what the bar is and knowing what a deep subject is.
That's right.
And knowing how the commitment
to it.
The people who really, at the end of the day, who really knock it out, they don't knock it out because they work on a Tuesday.
No, that's true. That's very true. And it's really great to be able to have people understand, why is this a good painting?
Yeah.
Or why is this print cost this much versus this one costing that much? It is so important for people to understand the value of art, period, whether it is something that was made by someone who's just learning, or someone who's made by something that's made by someone who has been showing in galleries and museums across the country. It's not just about that's pretty or it's well done. There's a depth of understanding of how that got that way. And if you are beginning as an artist or trying to move along that trajectory, it's not enough just to practice. It's enough to, you have to start looking, you have to start asking the hard questions, you have to see art that's in museums and that's not easy to understand.
And by doing lets you into the great conversation.
That's right.
And the great conversation is timeless. It goes all the way back to what's coming in the future, and that great conversation, you can you can go and be a spectator in art and look at a lot of art and read a lot of art books, but until you start stealing, until you really start looking and saying, how did they do that, and stealing and looking at materials and how did they make that, and all that is, in other words, you look at a piece of, I looked at this, I was in, where was I? Seattle last week, and I looked at this Jackson Pollock, and I saw this silver background that he put on this with this black over it, and you know, you kind of look at these things as iconic, but when you start making art and you start deconstructing how they did, and it's just this paint and this paint and this paint and this paint, and yet this thing breathes and has life and is something with, you know, it has got soul to it. And how did that magical transaction happen?
And until you start to try it and you realize, holy buckets, that's not easy to do, and I don't understand it. And that's where you can try it and it doesn't work, but you can never get there until you work from your own authentic self and your own authentic experiences, paired with the skill sets that you're learning and that you've chosen to learn and that you've chosen to practice. When those two things come together, that's when you get your authentic art. And that's when you get to start to see, wow, I cried while I was making this. That's success.
Yes, because you're touching something deep.
That's deep. That's yours.
Yeah.
You know.
And,
so yeah.
And it's, you know, what I love about painting is the scariness of it. You can do something and you can shock yourself, especially if you don't know if it's the worst thing you've done or the best thing you've done, and you get in that middle thing where you're shocking and you go hide something, because you can touch things that you can't get through the intellect. Your intellect has a lot of screens.
That's right.
But when you come through that other medium,
it's really fascinating.
It's really revealing.
You become a much more complex thinker, and you experience things differently.
You know, and the luxury of the conversation. You know, just the luxury of having art and looking at art and being able to look at something that you might not have looked at before, and getting information from it. And especially at a time now where reality is so squishy and amorphous, the artist and the artist's voice and that true experience is important now.
Well, it's always been important, and hopefully people will. I mean, we always go to the arts to help heal us and to help us understand things that are really hard to understand, and it needs to be supported and valued in every community and for every person, not just kids.
So I just want to end again. Let's just talk about Open Ground Studio, where it is, and
so
who's
the
for
big news is that I have is we have a big grand reopening happening next Friday night or whenever this airs. It'll be on January 26th from 5 to 7:30, and it's a double whammy. We have our first exhibition of the year with Erin Hunter's paintings. She's an amazing local treasure, scientific illustrator. But she's doing her personal work, and there's some incredible paintings to see for her artist reception, and we're pairing it with our grand reopening, so you can come and see the whole new renovation of the studio. You'll meet the 18 artists who are in our resident artists at Open Ground Studios, and you'll see what a kind of a vibrant resource we are for our community, for learning art, for buying art, for getting to see practicing artists of all ages and collaborations. So please come to our new opening next Friday night.
So, my great friend, Denese Sanders.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Open Ground Studio. And 5 years, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yay.
Yay. You're watching YourTown Television. I'm Mark Baer. We'll be back. See you later. Bye.